in the midst of like, not moving on from things and sitting in them, like you said, you hear things that are all over the place, like hard and pain-filled, and the people who are serving on the ground. So you hear like stories that are right in the midst of it, which are often worse than what a news station could capture in the midst of it. Like, where do you put all that? You know what I mean? Like, you come here, you're laughing, talking, joking, all this guy. Like, where do you put all the hard that you listen to?
That's a great question. I think I initially processed that back when I was in post-secondary. I studied international development, and it seemed like all of my classes happened to be everything wrong that has happened in the world. And then at that time also ISIS was happening, and I actually almost crumbled. It was heavy because you just hear about so much terribleness and just the dehumanizing of people and just atrocities happening against people. And it was one thing after another and in so many different places. And yeah, that was pretty consuming. But I think slowly as a process, releasing that to God and just recognizing I get to be a part of it in some way. And ultimately he's the one that cares about people, and he's the one that created them. And so however we can come alongside, then that can bring some peace to being involved. But it's still hard because you can quickly get into, well, great, we helped 100 or maybe a few thousand people, or somewhat, millions of people, maybe through some partners that are actually having that type of reach. But what about the millions more? And so you can quickly fall into that, or you can think about human trafficking, like in Nepal, because you're going there. We support, or they have hundreds of kids who have gone through their safe houses, but then you could think of the hundreds of thousands more who are still being trafficked. And we constantly hear about new ways of people that are new ways of exploitation. And so it's challenging. It always feels like there's a new problem. But I think just doing the thing that's in front of you and doing the one next thing, and deeper relation. Oh, someone actually, no, this was the big thing. We did the book study. Pastor Jeremy took us through. Oh man, I can't remember, but there was something about the maturity of a disciple, and it's to be able to look in the face of suffering and not despair. And I think coming to that point, it's not like you don't feel it anymore or you quickly get over it, but it's not despairing in the midst of it. And so I think that that's something that I have developed in, and I think I can only explain that by deeper relationship with God and understanding his place within all of the suffering that's taking place.
I think this is such a significant piece of like discipleship in the world when you're engaging with things like media, like you had mentioned in your post-secondary, where things are just overwhelming. You look at not just the economic state of the world, but even the natural state of where things are, like globally around like climate change, and people just feel so hopeless, and they feel like they can't make any headway on anything. If I was to change my whole lifestyle, it wouldn't change a single thing, because we're still burning coal globally and burning fossil fuels globally in a way that needs energy supply, and like renewables aren't catching up fast enough, and how are we going to cut this? And it's terrifying if you look to the science of what it's going to be, and it can lead people to a crazy set of despair. And like, how do you make those leaps and bounds as other global disasters keep happening, or the war that's happening, or the like the supply chain disruption that's happening, and and so you get into this place where you just feel like, wow, I'm so out of control. I have no control over what's happening in the world around me. How do I handle this? And that deeper relationship with Jesus gives you that perspective of, but there is one who is in control, and one who is good, and one who is trustworthy, and one who you can put your hope in, and one who you can actually help you then to make the changes you can in the influence you have. That's really important.
I think it's important too what you're saying, like just knowing your own emotions and like being able to understand and be like, this is too much for me. Like, how are you going to deal with that? And there are sad things, and I think we shouldn't take that lightly. But then sometimes they are crippling and debilitating to say, I can't deal with this. It's like, okay, well, you need to work through that. Like, you do have to take care of yourself first so you can go and do what you're called to do.
Well, actually, the most profound thing that I had heard, and I was reminded of it, we visited the IJM Philippines office, and their work is working with OSEC, which is the online sexual exploitation of children. And you go and visit, and their office is the happiest, most joyful environment you could ever step into. And when we were at the global gathering in April that Pastor Jeremy, myself, and Nicole, our communications manager, had the opportunity to attend, the executive director of Philippines was on stage, and they talked about that. And people noted that they were the most joyful office. And he said, well, we have fun. So it's like, yes, you can be engaging in hard work. And I think that's maybe where people get caught up in, is just because you're doing hard work, you can't then have that fun. It's like, while people are suffering, you can't find some joy. It's almost that guilt. But they're like, no, we have fun. We stop for some games. We might have so many things going on and lots of tasks, but we're going to stop as a staff and actually have some fun together. And so they did a whole karaoke battle, across their staff. And so just bringing those moments of joy into it and laughter is really healing medicine. And so I find I just laugh a lot.
Yeah. Do you think there was something about being part of something that also contributes? Like sometimes when you don't know what to do, like Zach was saying, you get crippled in the options of what you can help in and what you're like, where you look at an office like this, it's like they are doing hard work against something that is like evil in the world. And then they're having fun still while on the side of doing the work they can. But for a lot of us, it's like, well, what are we even doing? Right? Like, do you feel doing something contributes to your ability to handle some of the things that you engage with?
That's a great perspective. But yeah, I would agree that it does because you at least have one thing. And I think that's the thing, just what's the one thing in front of you. And so, if you're a part of something, then you can say, okay, well, at least this is making an impact.
I don't know. Like I think about the work we do here and you talk with lots of people going through really tough times. And I find that early on, and I talk to people who are new into ministry. And I know for me, new into ministry, you start working double time because you see the opportunity is like, I need to help that person. I need to help that person. I need to help that person. And I feel like it took me a long time to get to a place where it's like, there's one savior, I'm not him.
But that's exactly the point. It's why are you helping? Is it because you think you can save, or it's no, God saved me, and so he's just inviting me to be a participant, and part of then that becomes meaningful, and it's like, okay, then I'm a participant in his work.
Yeah. But I think if
you think you're the savior, you're always gonna be set up for success.
Like if you don't know Jesus, if you don't have a relationship with him, I think it'd be impossible. Like I think you literally have to. It's easy for me to think about literally probably the worst thing in the world is sexual exploitation of children. Like I'm thinking I'm not doing anything to contribute to that directly, but I just ignore it. Like I'll just work over here. There's good people doing over there. I'll try to support them. But if I would, when you're in it, it becomes, wow, this is a problem. Oh, this is a problem. How many millions? What? And like, that's just crazy.
But I would say, sorry, I know you're going to say something.
No, that's great.
But I think it's also for people because you were a part of Young Life, right?
Yep.
And so you and your wife, you guys have been a part of Young Life. So if you associate some of the things you have been involved in and see how that may not be exactly like anti-human trafficking work, but you hear about all the things that are happening with youth on social media, and we talked about having good mentorship. Well, that really is creating that space where it's that prevention side. It's you're being a positive influence in a young person's life to hopefully prevent them from getting to the space of having to go through the whole process of freedom and healing, and which is a way longer process than just having youth protected in the first place. So.
Yeah. And I was going to say, Zach, like anytime you're in on any organization that's fighting to make change, you deal with the bad things, but you also get a great amount of good things in the midst of that.
For sure.
You get the wins. You get to see where change is being made. You get to see that it's not just you who has some sort of, feeling of injustice towards something. And that kind of banding together, even without Jesus, causes people to like really strive after remarkable change and difference in the world that brings a benefit to society. So I think when you're, part of the benefit of joining God in his mission, knowing that he's sovereign, is you get not only you don't only have to see the hard things, but you get the wins. And then you also get the hope of his sovereignty over the change and the hope of his justice beyond what you see, and like all these beautiful things that come from a biblical narrative that says God is God and we're not. We don't have to be savior, he is. And I think you're right, when you step into ministry or anything, like you will mature in the role you're in based on your experience, but you'll also have other people who've matured around you say, hey, I want to you give you language to what you're feeling.
Right.
Oh, I can't save them. And they're like, hey, you're not the savior.
Yeah.
Oh, I can't change anything. Hey, you just do your part. Like trust that there's a bigger one who's doing more than you could ever
or
do.
The frustration of not seeing things change or seeing people change quickly. I've seen that a lot. People get involved in something and they're working with people who are more vulnerable or who have been through really extreme circumstances, and you expect, just entering to someone's life, you're like, I'm kind of helping, so I should just quickly see a change. Well, my motto is people take time. People could take 15 years to actually see a shift. Or, it could take shorter amount, but just to be in it for the long haul is also important with that grounding of that bigger perspective, I think is what helps Jesus followers. But